I'll call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. And can I get a motion that the minutes of the, that the agenda for the February 11th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted with the addition of closed session item 1.2, third-party contract negotiations. Councillor Chenard makes that motion. All in favor? Motion carried. And I'll get a motion that the minutes of the January 28th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as presented. Councillor Bevan makes that motion. All in favor? Motion carried. Questions, comments, or concerns? And so we'll move on to our reports from staff. From the Executive Office, we have our core audit results. And McKenna Stitzenberger, our Health and Safety Coordinator, will be presenting that.
Hello, Council. As you know, I'm here to go over the core audit results. Most of the information was contained within the report that was sent to Council. I'll be touching on a few additional points and show a breakdown of the results. So we passed our core audit with a score of 85%. We are continually improving each year, and our results show that. Here is a breakdown of each element and score. As you can see, we've had a couple elements score below 80. However, that gives us good room for improvement. Here's the breakdown of our score 2019 versus 2018. So note there are two new elements in the 2019 audit tool. And other than that, it's apparent from the graph here that we have improved from last year. We had a total of 71 incidents reported with no lost time claims, meaning no one was away from work due to an injury that they sustained at work. This is a great accomplishment and is in part thanks to our modified work program, allowing us to keep employees integrated in the workplace after a workplace injury with physician approval. This is also a great sign of a strong safety culture and no fear of reporting incidents and near misses. So in 2020, we are working on completing more incident investigations to determine root causes and implement corrective actions to prevent reoccurrence. We also would like to increase the number of near-miss reports to in turn decrease the number of incident reports. We also reported our first 2 potentially serious incidents, PSIs, to Alberta OHS, and again, we've still had no lost time claims since 2016. And now, if there's any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, McKenna. We'll start with Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you for the presentation through the chair. I'm sorry if I missed it, but I know over the last few years a number of incidents have been going up, and we were saying that was because we're just doing a better job of reporting and more open and transparent and more welcoming of those reports. Are the numbers still going up?
Yes, they are still going up. We've also implemented a new form which we're calling a hazard report form. So this is also going to decrease the number of incident reports. We're trying to catch any hazards before they cause an incident or a near miss.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chenard.
Actually, I have 2 questions out loud. The first one, who does your incident investigations for you? Do you have someone appointed or several people?
Through the chair to Councillor Chouinard. So legislation now mandates that there's a member from the Joint Health and Safety Committee, the manager, and then obviously the workers involved for interview questions and that kind of stuff, complete the investigations.
Delta, if you go back to the elements, with element 9, what element is that? Because then obviously we did good and we were discouraged. Do we have the breakdown of what that element is?
That is incident investigation and incident reporting.
Oh, okay.
With the new legislation changes that came in 2018,
right.
We just didn't completely amend our directive to match those, and we just should be completing a few more investigations.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious, but other than that, good job. I mean, I know how hard these are to do, so if you're improving, your whole team is doing a great job.
Absolutely, totally agree.
Okay. Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair. Well, you were saying that there's more training needed. What type of training do you take for violence and harassment?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilkinson, more awareness training on how to deal with it, even for the management team, and then for the worker level, just being aware of what is considered harassment and that kind of stuff.
So no specific type of training, like modules in it or anything?
No, there's nothing really specific or mandated. There is a lot of companies and organizations that offer training in harassment and discrimination and stuff like that, being with the new changes to legislation.
Again, I just have one more question.
Okay.
It says to conduct more ERP drills. How many do you conduct now yearly?
One per location per year.
And what are they suggesting?
To increase the frequency, as well as sometimes some locations will just default to what they call a tabletop exercise. So basically sitting at a table and just discussing what you would do if the fire alarm was to go off right now, rather than actually pulling the fire alarm and seeing what happens.
Thank you.
Councillor Curry and then Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, can you just tell me what PSI is?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Curry. PSI is a potentially serious incident. So this is along with the new legislation in 2018 there. Basically anything that could have resulted in a serious incident, injury, or property damage.
Perfect, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, on your ERP drills, do you ever just go out and have the people go out to wherever an incident is and, report back in and stuff like that? Physically go out to, even though, it's just a drill, instead of just doing a tabletop? I know when we do our drills and that, we come pick up all our gear and stuff like that. We physically go up to a range road or whatever and say we're there, we don't block it off, and then we find out that there's somebody that's disabled and needs assistance, and we call back and we're doing this and that. I mean, it's nice to do a tabletop, but if we don't have people who's versed in where the town, what's going on in the town, where it is, if they get lost and you don't get out to that area or whatever, and that, I like the idea that, we leave, we go physically go out to wherever it is, and we have all our stuff in the vehicles, and we go from that. And then the command center is there, and the tabletop is still going on, but we are physically out in the areas at times and that.
Right. Through the chair to Councillor Bevan. Yes, so that this past year, that's been our initiative, and moving forward this year as well, will be to conduct the physical drills. And typically when we do the physical drills, we call it a debrief outside, where we would discuss everything that happened, the actions that were taken before everyone arrived at the muster point, that kind of stuff.
Okay, again.
I guess I have one more through you. And do we have enough radios to go around? We have an incident in that. Like, I know at one time we were short, and I know we got different types of radios. Thinking of when we had an accident on the bridge overpass, people didn't have the proper radios, so they couldn't call in to say there was an incident here or whatever. They were, handicapped that way.
Right. Through the chair to Councillor Bevan. To my knowledge, yes, every worker out in the field now is equipped with their own radio.
Theodorica?
Yeah, I think just to clarify as well, is that the ERP are site specific, as in they are at our buildings and our locations, and an incident that happens out in the field, the response is a little bit differently. And so we do at minimum one actual physical emergency response drill at each site a year, and then now have the mandate to increase that either by adding tabletops or additional drills. Just a difference between a response to an incident in the field and the ERP exercises that take place at our various locations.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, McKenna. My questions have been answered. I don't believe we have any more questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move on to our revised council remuneration policy, which Colin McComb, our HR manager, will be presenting.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to try to get through this without mispronouncing the word remuneration. So, last time we were here, you asked administration to find a way to phase in the increases that would bring up both council and the mayor to the 50th percentile by the start of the next term. There is an additional ask in there as well to try and find a way to factor benefits into that equation. We've explored those options, and that has proven difficult. And the reason being is that the cost of benefits per year per counselor is going to be about $5,600. So if we were to institute benefits that would already take council over that 50th percentile and would bring the mayor most of the way there. So what we're suggesting is that we leave the policy as it already is with an opt-in approach, in which any councillor can say, I would like benefits and I'm prepared to pay the full cost, and then phasing in those increases over the next 3 years, including the current year, with that will put council at the 50th percentile in line with our 2018 data by the beginning of the next council term. So that is the basic text of the policy that we've put forward. In addition to that, if you look at the policy, you'll see that the actual wages would be in there for the next term. The graduated increase wouldn't be in there, that's just in the RFR. In addition to that, we're also simply proposing some clarifications, some syntax changes, a little bit of reorganization of the policy, as well as the removal of a travel provision that doesn't seem to be utilized and could cause tax problems if it were.
All right, thank you, Colin. We'll open the floor to questions. Won't all put our hands up at once. Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair, when it comes to exceptional compensation and the, what do we call it, daily meeting rate, it says it must be passed by a resolution of council. I'm just wondering if that's overly onerous bar to achieve, if there might be an easier, quicker method. For instance, if a meeting, an all-day meeting was going to happen next week and we wanted to send someone there, it would be impossible for us to have it passed by resolution in time. So I'm just wondering if there's an easier method to achieve that.
Through the chair, that would be entirely up to council. My understanding is that the aim of the policy here is to have the bulk of the compensation instilled in the salaries, and that it's intentionally difficult to utilize for that reason, so that the full salary is pretty clear and outlined in terms of what council can typically expect to make in a year. So the intent, I believe, was to create this as a just-in-case sort of thing.
Okay. Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, with that whole thing, and maybe I missed out on it, like what would be a just-in-case? I could see that being totally removed, that if we're on a monthly salary, that there is no option for a daily rate.
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps I'll take that one, just as Colin may not have some of the historical background there. So the intent of that is, as we considered it, there are certain things that would be considered exceptional. For example, if you are sitting on an SDAB board and you have a requirement for multiple days of training that you only have to do once every 3 years, it's kind of an exceptional or an extraneous act that is outside of kind of the normal parameters of the council duties. So that's just an example of the type of thing that was discussed as that would apply in that instance. There may be other trainings or other things that come along, but as Colin mentioned before, certainly the intent of this was that it would be little used. I think that is intentional, and that the effort was made to try and encapsulate as much as possible, that the salary portion would cover the regular responsibilities of council. However, I think it is helpful that discretion remains for council, and it's obviously it's not possible to think of all the potential circumstances that are there, but what I think is good is that council can and does have a mechanism to address what might be an unusual circumstance should it arise.
Through the chair, just reply. I guess it could be kept in just for that reason, but it gets very cloudy then. If you've got a retreat of 3 days for some committee you're on, like what's the difference? And if you have 3 days of training somewhere, it gets very iffy, I think. So I just assume see it taken out totally, but If you feel it should stay in, the majority view, that's up to you.
Councillor Curry?
Through the chair, I also had the same clause highlighted, and for the same concerns. I think we should definitely have the pass by resolution of council. But I did question it being in here only because I don't think in my time we've ever utilized it. And I'm on the subdivision and took the training and all of those, and quite a few of the committees that we sit on, like some of my committees end up being full days, and have never considered taking it. So I haven't all, because I do hear what you're saying, that there could be something, and if there was something where somebody had to be away for like, you know, a substantial amount of time, that is a big commitment, but it is that, historically, have we even used it once in this term?
Okay, so Derek on.
Yeah, Kayla would like to respond, I think, has some information that may be
Okay.
useful.
Thank you, through the chair. So it was for the ARB training, the Assessment Review Board training, which was a concern at the time when we changed this to being just a lump sum compensation, because that one was exceptional, and it took 3 days. There was an exam. You were in class all day. It was very onerous. So council felt that that might be an exceptional thing that you would be reimbursed for. The SDAB training right now is not that onerous. And the ARB training, again, only took place once every 3 years. So it was something that I wanted to reimburse council members who sat on that board once every 3 years. Whereas most of the other ones that are, you know, maybe full day, but they do happen every single year, so they would have been accumulated into that lump sum compensation. And so it's just hard to say what training could come down the line from the government. Maybe the SDAB training will become more significant, but that's just...
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chenard?
If I'm reading this right, so what you're proposing in 2020 and 2021, that we give ourselves an increase, where it's $8,500 a year for the next 3 years, is that correct? It would be on the second page in.
So, through the chair, the policy and the graduated approach are two different documents. The policy, typically the way the policy should work as it's written is in the final year of a council term, HR is directed to go out and do another external market survey. Then we take the 50th percentile from that data gathered, and it would always be a year behind because we're going to look at actuals. And then you set the base level policy or the base level rate for the next term based on that 50th percentile. What we are proposing outside of that as a special consideration, and given what we talked about at our last meeting, is to phase those increases in the interim. So if you look at the RFR we submitted, 2022, it says policy next to it. That's when you achieve the policy rate. For this year and next year, you're getting up there 1/3 of the shortfall at a time. So for council, that's a very clean line. That's $1,000 at a time, whereas for the mayor, that's 3,000 and something.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the $8,500 is the total impact of both adjustments to the mayor and all of council's compensation.
Okay. Councillor Chenard?
As far as like, you know, sending it out for another one, we don't review it comparing ourselves to other towns and cities very often, so we did one. So I believe the audit we did was good, and we can use, because even when we go 50th percentile, I don't necessarily even agree with that, because each town and city has different circumstances. So a lot of times I strongly agree at the end of our term, so in 2021, so in, you know, August, September, sometime going out, at that time we could review it for the next council. But to put into policy that we automatically do that, I'm not in favor of looking at the numbers, because in some cases when I compare ourselves to other towns, some things we do and we all go on, cost money, and the other towns don't. So a prime example is like when we voted this in, FCM, where we gave ourselves a base salary and we compare ourselves to be lower than our neighboring towns, which our wages are lower, but they only allow 2 of council to go. So there is money, so I take it as what I get paid a wage, plus I don't have to go, but it's offered to me. If I want to go on, different AUMA, FCM, where a lot of times we go to other meetings, joining other councillors, and we do expense, so I factor all that in. So I would be very interested in reviewing it, but to implement and put in the policy, I would say that, to me, I wouldn't be in favor of that.
Councillor Sorensen?
Through the chair, I am in support of what we agreed with last week, or 2 weeks ago in the community of the whole meeting. And it looks like the table that you have presented here reaches that by 2022, and at which point policy would take over. However, 2 weeks ago we did talk about applying the CPI adjustments. The report we've seen was from 2018 numbers, and 2 weeks ago we agreed that the cost of living allowances would be applied for 2019, 2020, 2021. So I'd be in support of these so long as there's an asterisk or something that says the CPI is going to be applied.
Okay. Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, if you're looking for input, I'm not in favor of this. As I said last meeting, I am in favor of our mayor getting a raise. He's paid at the lowest of the low salaries, and I think his wage should be adjusted. I'm very happy with mine. I knew what it was. If we want to change things, I believe I'll do it just before the next election. And as far as the cost of living goes, nurses, teachers, everybody else is getting 0, so I don't see where I need any more.
Okay. Councillor Curry?
Through the chair, I'm in favor of the way that the policy is set out, and opposite of what Councillor Schnard says, I like that it's in policy, and I like that it is set, and it's not us changing our mind based on how we feel at that time. This is a policy, it states what's happening, we know what's happening, it's very factual, and you know kind of what the expectation of that is, and then also knowing that at any time it still comes to council to vote, and so they can still vote against that actual money increase. I like the phased in effect for the reason of it's less extreme over 3 in 1 year. So when I look at that and I see to get us to that 50 percentile, which I think is important for us to be competitive and to try to encourage people that this is something. And I also do think that we are worth it. I do think that we put in a lot of hours and a lot of time, and so I think that too, but I like the phased effect for the actual operating costs of the business versus doing 25,000 in 1 year, I think is a lot. So I do like it the way this is, and I appreciate the work you put into it. Thank you.
I'll say my comments as well. I'm glad that you just left the benefits as they are with the opting in, and I feel that the policy as it's written sums up the conversation we had last week. I did have one concern. Does the cost of getting the market survey cost less than what the actual increase is that we've received? I'm just wondering. I appreciate that it's a third party and it's taking us and administration out of that equation. I'm just kind of concerned if that cost is comparable to what the increase is.
Thank you. Not if you're looking at a 4-year span.
Okay.
I can provide a more accurate number if you like, but you're looking at about $10,000 to $15,000 for a compensation survey. The way we have this structured as it is right now, I would not anticipate that we would be doing one in 2021. The intent is kind of, we've done the survey, we're setting the rate for 2022. Also, we have it in our policy to conduct surveys for our staff as well. And so it's not, you're looking at all of staff, not just council. So it's impacting the rest of the staff as well as council. So I see that as a value add.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bevan?
To the chair. Yeah, I'm happy the way we are after being on for a second term here. I look what we've done last term and this term here. We have not taken on a lot of other stuff in that, and we also have alternates that can go, and if the alternates can go, we can put somebody else there and go in that. So, you know, I don't care what the other councillors are getting around the country, the states, wherever and that. I look at what we're doing, and we haven't taken on a lot more in the last 4 years I was on, the last 2 years I was on here now. We have not taken on any more, and we're not development anymore. And everybody across the board here, wherever you go, is taking wage cuts and everything else. And they've even taken days off because they can't even put in a full week's work because they can't get paid for it. And nobody's getting any kind of bonuses and stuff like this and that any place, and yet we want to give ourselves a raise because we go to a few more meetings or we don't go to a few more meetings. I can't see that. To me, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I don't support it at all.
Should we vote on it tonight?
Okay. Does, sorry, Councillor Sorensen?
Through the chair, I'd like to ask administration to summarize what you've heard tonight, because I'm not clear on what I heard tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I think at this point it's pretty clear there's two kind of positions, and so when we encounter a position like that, we would just bring it forward and then let it be settled by the will of council for a vote. I think what we've heard is that the policy, the structure, or the amendments, or those are acceptable in and of themselves, and philosophically that each councillor would just need to decide whether or not they support that direction. So at this point, I think we would bring the policy as presented or as recommended forward for council to consider, and then obviously we will take whatever direction we receive there.
Councillor Sorensen?
Just take one more, through the chair, sorry. I just take one more opportunity to emphasize the need. We paid for a third-party consultant to give us a number for 2018. If we don't apply those CPI adjustments, we're basically rejecting his numbers, because in 3 years we're going to be 10% below the 50th percentile. We're going to be 40th percent, or we're going to be much lower. So to apply his number 3 years later, 4 years later is you're just making the numbers irrelevant at that point.
And also my comments are when the third-party consultant did the survey, they did stress that there's a difference between being the 50th and being in the 65th, and by no means by being in the 50th are we making this position an incentive, a financial incentive to be in this position. And I think that we have a really good balance with that, with the way the policy is presented to us, and that I think it's important that we want to attract people to run in elections, and this is a part of it. So, okay. All right, if we don't have any more comments and administration is clear,
as mud.
then we'll move on.
Okay, Madam Chair, the next two I'm going to leave for.
Okay, and just wait till we
Okay,
start.
go ahead and bring it down.
So,
Would you guys like cake? I can make it on very clean.
excuse me. Next up is infrastructure and planning. We've got our 2019 waste diversion from the landfill presentation by Bruce Thompson, who is our environmental and fleet services manager, and Councillor Chenard is declaring a conflict of interest on the next two items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Council. It's my pleasure to present this news of a diversion rate of over 50% from the total amount of curbside material left out. Congratulations to Council. This was, I wish I could take some credit for it, but this was laid out by your leadership long before I arrived here. 51%, that pretty much covers the volume of food waste and yard waste that's available in the waste stream. It's huge. It means a great reduction in greenhouse gases, depending on which calculator you look at. I've been playing with the federal one. It represents somewhere between 90 and 116 vehicles taken off the road per year. The volume that's saved in the landfill itself, compacted, spatially takes up about the same room as 3 sea-can containers would, which is arguably about the size of this room. So the thing about the greenhouse gases is landfilling creates methane, whereas composting does not create as much, so that's a huge win. The other part of it is the landfill space can be preserved for the long haul, where that landform grows and grows and grows. The compost footprint stays the same, and it just rolls off and keeps cycling through. I would love to have brought some along of the material, and I will get some in the spring. They're selling it by the truckload, and they've sold out. And so I was a little disappointed to hear that. I thought I could pass a Ziploc bag around or something like that. It's really good news. Now, when you take this along with the Edson District Recycling Society's facility and their operations and the volume that they move out every year, the town of Edson has a mighty integrated waste management system. Congratulations.
Thank you, Bruce. We'll open the floor to questions. Councillor Curry.
Through the chair, not a question. I just want to say this is fantastic. I know the Recycling Society was even shocked at how much, what that percentage was. And I think that it's amazing that we are, as a town, that we are doing this well. And I lied, I do have a question. It's not, but it's, I think it might be to Steve, not you, Bruce. I would love for this to be, or are we planning for this to be put on our social media?
It's for Bruce.
Oh, for Bruce.
Yes.
Social media, are we doing it as social media?
Through the chair to Councillor Curry, yes. This will be rolled out with our annual report along with the Edson District Recycling Society. We also have a one-pager that we'll post ASAP on our green webpage.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Good job.
Thank you if I may add to that. And I think the real accolades go to the users, the people, because not only have we been incredibly successful in the volume diverted, but we continually get reports from GFL that our compost is among the cleanest that they receive. So people are not only using it, but they're using it properly. And in terms of I think it would be safe to say, perhaps Bruce would maybe contradict me if he thinks I'm off base here, that this has probably been the most significant effort that the town of Edson has made in environmental sustainability in the recent past, and without question a wonderful success.
Awesome. Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, Bruce, thank you very much for the report, and really I'm echoing what Mike said. It really is the citizens of Edson. But you do think Recycling Society started 25 years ago, and I think people are diligent in their recycling there, and again, if it's clean, what they're doing with organics, I'm really proud of our citizens, and I think that we should really highlight this, that this is what we're made of as a town.
Certainly.
Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair to Bruce, yeah, I agree with all these comments. This is fantastic news, and not only should it be publicized locally, but I think this is national news. I can't think of another municipality that has ever reduced their landfill waste by 51%. So fantastic, and I think we should get the word out.
Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair to Bruce too. I agree in that. I also know that the citizens liked that when GFL was to pick up in that, they would tag the bin and let them know that, something was not right there or whatever, and that they just didn't push it off to the curb and, dump it over and that. But they also let their citizens know that, a certain wasn't there, they put a tag on it. And I've seen the tags on the bins and that, and they were thankful because they did get confused of what should go where. But once they got educated, they knew about it. But, GFL has been done that, and I've seen their drivers get out and do it, and also help people bring their stuff down from time to time. So I think it's the citizens deserve a good round of praise, plus also our carrier that picks it up too. And that's good job.
Through the chair, Councillor Bevan, I agree. Since the GFL took over our waste hauling, we get very minimal complaints about anything regarding service, and they're prompt whenever we do.
If I may just add, I think that if council does deserve some, I think, positive feedback in that it becomes dim in our memory quite quickly, but if we remember how the program started.
No, it's not dim. Yes.
So I would call that as a faceplant. But we got up and we kept going because we believed in it, and council easily could have backed away and said, oh my gosh, that was a train wreck, we're not going to do this. But it's a credit, I think, for sticking with something that clearly this group believed in, and I think is evident now that it's clearly the right thing for our community. And so I do think that that's an important element of the way the program has developed. And sometimes you have to skin your knees a little bit, but I think when you're on a pursuit of something as important as appropriate waste management and those types of things, that you have to push through those things even when it's difficult, and this council did that admirably in a difficult circumstance.
One question to administration. Thank you. When I read the report, my jaw dropped. I had to read it again. I didn't believe what I read, and I was shocked by it, but then I went and looked at my own garbage and realized that that might be true. So I do have a question though. Do we know where Edson sits compared to like a national average of per capita waste or waste diversion or organics contribution or anything that we can kind of compare ourselves with, our peers in the nation?
I don't have those figures on me currently. The Recycling Council of Alberta will have a database, I'm sure, on their website.
Okay.
We are generating about 0.6 metric tons per household in town, which is low in itself. And then by diverting that again away, it's we're in really good standing.
Yeah.
But I can find out and let it be known.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, we sit here and we're talking about GFL, and it seems a conflict with Councillor Chenard. It isn't, because he isn't involved in this, but we say what a good job they're doing. Possibly we should send a letter or do something to GFL's head office and say how pleased we are with how they integrated the service here, because I think too often we forget to say thank you, and they have put effort into it. We did make a huge mess with the other company, and they did come in and save our backsides, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. If I may, through the chair, we have made it abundantly clear on many occasions how appreciative we were. Certainly in the initial stages, the transition effort was in and of itself remarkable. The way GFL handled that, but then we've just enjoyed a really smooth, steady, consistent level of service, which is really a good thing. Bruce is in touch with them regularly and speaks with their management, and we certainly are reinforcing the positive experience that we've had. So that's on the tip of our tongue whenever we're interacting with them.
And I hope with the Recycling Society as well, because it's all of us working together for the same goal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Through the chair, this relates to your question. The West Yellowhead Waste Management Authority recently did a 5-year plan into the future, but it also did a snapshot of where we are. And I don't have those numbers with me, but it did compare our landfill diversion rates to similar communities in Alberta, and there was a variety of communities that we were compared to. And I know at that point we were below the average. So we're well before. This is going to be amazing when we include these numbers. But we can get you that report.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Then we will move on to our proposed mattress disposal fee at landfill, and it's my understanding that Bruce is also presenting that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report is a response or reaction to a surcharge that is being invoked at the regional landfill for mattresses. A $20 surcharge will be charged for any company bringing mattresses into that site. Essentially a pay-as-you-throw scenario. So currently the town of Edson is in operation of a transfer station. So we are hauling those items in containers to Hinton. So we as a municipality will be looking at the surcharge for each mattress that we haul in there. So what we're recommending is that we match that surcharge at our tipping, at our scale as well to cover those costs. And then as well as once our transfer station is, we're back to the landfill business, we don't want to become the local people shopping for rates and have them bring these items to us, because the challenge that the region's having is they're not compaction friendly. They're difficult to deal with. They depending on what kind of a unit you've got, as far as a landfill operating machine goes, a bull mag can take out the box springs, but nothing can deal with the mattresses. So they have to be sprinkled around and managed through your working phase as you go. So they do take a lot more effort, and they take up more space per weight than any other material. So our recommendation is that from administration would be that council consider implementing a $20 surcharge for mattresses.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, good report again. Can you tell me how much it is to develop a new cell? Like, that's our alternative, isn't it? To not recycle and throw the mattresses in a cell. So what does that cost us?
Essentially, when you're paying a tipping fee across the scales at our regional site, you're paying $56 a ton is what we pay. That's the membership rate.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially that compacts down, that ton of material will compact down to about 4/5 of that 80%.
Mm-hmm.
So that volume is compressed into airspace. So
right.
I would suggest the value of that airspace is worth about $60, $75 per cubic meter of airspace. A cell, typically what we're looking for in our new design is a 20 meter by 20 meter by 3 meter high each cell. That works out to be, I've got a calculator.
A whole bunch of
But
space.
it's
One
a bunch of
thousand
stuff,
two
a bunch of space.
1,200.
Now, we're not running thank you. We're not running a class 2 municipal solid waste site. We're running a class 3. So it isn't quite as expensive, and the daily cover applications and stuff aren't as restrictive on our site as others. But it's an expensive undertaking. It's I could run some numbers for you to get back to, but
So keeping mattresses out of it is a good
it's
thing.
great.
Right.
It is.
I think,
So Derek?
if I may be clear, so this process doesn't keep the mattresses
Right.
out of there, but it tries to better account
Yes,
for
that's
the cost, because they take up so much space relative to their size. It's trying to better capture the cost, so that if we do have to develop a new cell, mattresses now, as you dispose of them, are coming closer to paying their way, if you will.
And I thought that we were recycling these mattresses.
No.
Anyway, try that.
Okay, Councillor Sorensen?
Through the chair to council and administration, please correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, because you were there at the same time, but my understanding was that if you take a mattress to Edmonton to one of the recyclers there, it'll cost $20 to recycle the mattress. So we wanted it at least equal consequence of landfilling or recycling. So we're hoping now that if two options are the exact same cost, you'll choose the recycling option. So if you have a hotel with 100 mattresses and you have two options, you'll take the recycling option because it's the same price. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding.
That was what we were doing.
Through chair to Councillor Sorensen, the other thing is the extended producer responsibility would be, that would probably be a sensible amount to charge on the purchase of a mattress for in consideration of that as well, and then that goes with the mattress wherever they end up doing it, not unlike tires, that kind of thing. So
Councillor Bevan?
Through the chair, what were you charging before you come up with the $20? Was it just so much a ton going in and that?
it's the weight, that's correct, and if it didn't go over certain kilograms, they charge the flat 5. That's right.
So were they making money off of that, or were they losing going that way compared to going to the $20?
We're trying to equate. I wouldn't suggest that we're probably losing dollars, although the finer point hasn't been put on it at our operation, but it has been at the region because of the time it takes and the volume you get. Hinton can get, the regional site can get mattresses from Jasper, 100, 200 at a time, and then they've really got their hands full. So if they're gonna go $20, we don't really, I don't think, wanna go 10, because it might be worse just somebody that has 100 of them to come to us instead of them. So,
Exactly.
you know, it's like people shop around for construction and demolition.
And then we are being, when we take them to the regional site, we are being charged the 20. So if we only charge 10 here, then it's gonna cost us that $10 plus to dispose of them. And so if I was to say, I think that is the bigger message here, is just we wanna be in alignment so that people aren't quote unquote shopping around for cheap and easy disposal, and trying to encourage the most responsible methods for disposing of their waste, including potentially considering, you know, recycling options and those types of things.
Councillor Bevan?
Second question, Mr. Chair. So now when we go out to our landfill here, there's gonna be a specific bin just for mattresses. And now when I go out there, and I was out there the other day, I seen mattresses going in this bin, that bin. I mean, it was a mixture of everything in that. So there will be another clear bin out there marked for whatever. Is that how that's gonna work when we drop them off?
Through the chair to Councillor Bevan, we haven't determined what that will look like. It will be the easier way for us to get charged as we go across the scale at Hinton, if we can let GFL know how many mattresses are in a bin so that they can do the paperwork there, instead of having them sprinkle through and think that, expect somebody to sort through, right? So it would make sense for us to have them in a separate bin.
Yeah, because I seen a whole mixture out there, and I thought,
It is a
wow, that's
mixture,
going up
yeah.
there. Somebody's gotta say we got 20 in there, and there could be 40 in there.
True.
Sort of deal, but if we had a separate bin, you know, what you guys would do something, it'd be a lot easier for us to handle it and track. So it'd be interesting.
Okay, Councillor Curry?
I support, sorry, through the chair, I support doing the $20 increase. I think, one, for sure, if we're having to take them there ourselves and then we're taking the cost of it, I don't think that's fair to our taxpayers. And I also think that we've just shown how phenomenal we are at waste diversion. So if this encourages people not to take it to the landfill and possibly think about recycling, that just gives us one step further in our waste diversion. So I think it's also that it could encourage people to recycle, and I think that that's what we should be encouraging.
Councillor Sorensen?
I'd challenge my, through the chair, sorry. I'd challenge my council to think another step. If we are separating them as they come into our landfill, why don't we just take that $20 and bring the mattresses to Edmonton and have them recycled?
I agree. 100%.
We'd have to pay for shipping, but we're going to ship it to Hinton anyway, so we're just shipping another 90 kilometers. So I'd be in favor of taking these $20 and putting them in a separate pot of money for recycling of the mattresses.
Through the chair to Councillor Sorensen, we could consider that certainly for a transfer station operation, and we could also, once we get back into the landfill business and we're not hauling bins to Hinton, we can look at maintaining that type of a diversion process as well.
Yeah, my thoughts were echoing what Councillor Sorensen just said, is why if we're gonna ship it to anywhere and into a landfill, why not ship it somewhere where it's getting recycled and not entering that landfill, especially when they don't compact as well as other goods. And I think this is something that our council has talked about numerous times, and at AUMA, that this is something that extended producer responsibility should be paying for, and then it could be recycled at the cost of when it's purchased, instead of on the back end, which is expensive. I agree with this as well. I think charging that is fine. I did have a concern though that the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Association made this decision in June, and they're just sending us a letter now. So I thought the timing was a bit late for a letter, but nonetheless, glad that it's come before us. So, Councillor Wilkinson?
I just think there was confusion on that, but I just,
Yeah.
through the chair, when we do send it to recycling, I think it's really important that we check that they actually do recycle it. You know, I know here with our recycle depot, they make sure that they are recycling the plastic and stuff, because I think too often people recycle and it really just recycles into landfill someplace else. So I really hope that we check that they absolutely are doing the right thing.
Thank you. If I may add to that, through the chair. I'm not intimately familiar with this, so I'm just sharing some information. But my understanding is that mattresses aren't, I wouldn't describe them as recycled, they're shredded. And when they're shredded, they just have much less overall impact on the environment, and they can be disposed of in a more effective manner. So I don't think they are taking old mattresses and recycling them into new materials. They shred them down, and then it's just so much easier to deal with them. But I'm not
Through
familiar
the chair,
specifically.
what I'm concerned about is how much of the metal did they get out? Because I've heard just 30%. Wow,
I mean,
let's go to someone who gets more than that. Okay.
I don't know the specifics on that, but we'll certainly investigate.
Okay.
No,
All right, does administration have enough information to proceed forward?
sure, I will get Councilor Shaw.
Okay, all right, yes, please. Okay, thank you very much. We will then move on to our Community and Protective Services presentation, which is our Campground Investment Plan by Guy Latour and Garnet Davison. Guy Latour is our General Manager of Community and Protective Services, and Garnet Davison is our Parks Manager. Thank you.
Through the chair to council, thank you very much for having us. We've just started the initial work on putting stuff together for the campground investment plan and collecting information, and we really want to get clear information as we start moving forward and making plans. So the first step for the campground investment plan is clearly defining the purpose and intent of each of the campgrounds. A clear definition of the purpose will then allow us to establish the required services at each site and provide the resulting infrastructure investments required to meet the intended purpose. So I'm here asking you about philosophy and big picture stuff, for then we can try to narrow things down. We're totally open to any suggestions and ideas in detail wise, but we're seeking the larger picture kind of concept stuff. So what is the purpose of having municipal campgrounds? So are they for recreation? Are they for tourism? Or some of them are acting as housing right now for workers. Who do we want to attract to our campgrounds? Individuals, couples, families, workers. Again, trying to understand the overall purpose that we want for those two sites. So there's some things to consider. This is by no means any definitive way of defining campgrounds, and I've just did our very best to come up with some kind of framework to drive the discussion for council and to understand. So we were thinking about recreation, tourism, and temporary housing. And so if you're thinking about recreation demographics, those are people who are your old school campers, right? They're tents and, well, not necessarily tents, but they're out there to camp. Typically the length is shorter, multiple days. It's typically seasonal. The services campers are looking for are minimal, a campsite, outhouses. Physical location, typically campers like a wilderness type setting, right? And attractions, they're looking for outdoor types of attractions. Tourists, on the other hand, demographic is there are people visiting the area, potentially families and couples. Short to medium stays, couple days to a week, also very seasonal. The service level they're typically looking for is mid-level service, gravel sites, washrooms, maybe showers, power, water, maybe sewer, typically closer to a larger center where they can do tourism type activities. And attractions that they're looking for are family and tourism orientated. And then on the other far end is temporary housing. And a lot of our campgrounds around us are actually temporary housing for workers in the area. So it's the demographic is workers, typically adults, longer term stays, weeks to months, typically year-round. The services, heavy-duty pad. They want washrooms and showers, power, water, and sewer. They're expecting that level of service. And it's usually very close to or in a municipal center. And attractions, full service, laundry, restaurants, amenities that they're looking for. So again, it's no definitive way of structuring it, just trying to give you an idea to try to think about how philosophy-wise for service. Our current status, Wilmore's probably recreational. Lions Park, recreational tourism, somewhere in that area. What do you want that desired state to be? Do we Wilmore into the more tourism, Lions Park to move up to tourism, temporary housing? So just again, where we're at, where we want to go based on the philosophy of what level of service you want to provide. So discussions and questions.
Okay, thank you, Guy, for the presentation. Councillor Chenard.
Actually, Guy, thank you for your presentation. And I mean, camping and all that has been a question of it. The one question I have, I know Lions Park, just so I'm clear, we own the land and they run it, if I'm understanding it correctly?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
through the
so
chair to Councillor Chouinard, yes.
Then what my question would be, because I'm going through it, like I say, I mean, it's seasonal, but I mean, I would like to see even take part of, let's say, Lions Campground as well as Wilmore. Wilmore is tougher because it's far out, and make it more attractive to, as we call, temporary housing, because a lot of times we are bringing workers into towns, and I have to agree, the campgrounds surrounding us that are full service, some of them are staying very full. So if we could bring them up to that standard and charge accordingly, it would help pay for our outstanding. So if we invested $500,000 to make a campground into it, and I just, choosing a number, how much time would it take? So if we can take 50% of it full service and yet attract tourists, because a lot of times when I camped lots, when I was Googling ahead, I was looking for a full service. That means I'm showing up with my RV unit when the new RV's not like tents. I want to hook up to at least water and power. Sewer, you always have a overflow. So I would see pursuing it more, investigate like Lions, because even what you were saying is in town. But Wilmore Park, I'd like to see if we could add in some power and possibly look at, because it's what as we call more rugged, what it would cost to put in shower houses. So people typically in tents and stuff have a place to shower.
Through the chair to Councillor Chouinard. Once we get a clear definition, we start putting a plan together, we definitely would include cost recovery kind of numbers, if we're investing this much in this many sites and this is the recovery, what the rate might be. We'll definitely include that as we move forward.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. If I may add to that as well, I think one of the things that just comes to mind based on Councillor Chenard's feedback there is a consideration of the other providers in the community as well, and most of the other campgrounds close to Edson are in the market of temporary housing, or that is their market. And I'm not sure, or at least I've generally heard some hesitancy from council in the past to create competitive dynamics where we're now competing against other entities that are trying to accomplish or provide the same type of service. And I would be curious if that's something that council has feedback on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. First off, I'm kind of a little bit concerned that the name of this is an investment plan. In my mind, this was just a campground plan to figure out what we wanted to do going forward, and I never agreed to, I never encouraged investing a lot of money. So a campground plan I'm full support of. And I think there should be a gap analysis procedure or emphasis. What are we missing in our community? What do we need more of? And if commercial providers are already providing that service, then we don't need to get into that space unless they're overfull. I would be uncomfortable if all of our campgrounds, for instance, were full of long-term temporary workers, and nobody could come to our community to use our bike parks. No one could come to our community just as a stopover to Jasper. I know it would be great for the economy just to have temporary workers full, but we already have hotels, we already have campgrounds, we already have apartment complexes that are looking to make money off the temporary workers. And I don't think we need to be in that space. Maybe partially, but not as an emphasis. And I think we should be focusing on what gaps can we fill that commercially no one is willing to provide.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Curry?
Through the chair, I would echo what Councillor Sorensen is saying, in that I would like to see the gaps. So that would help me to understand more, is this a need or is this a want? And then talking just philosophically, I would not like to see Wilmore Park beyond recreation or tourism. I think that the amount of money that has been invested into that park and into the mountain biking and stuff has already kind of set that parameters of what that is. And so I think it would really take away if it was all temporary housing, which we know as soon as you add in too much, it is available. And I would like to see, though, with Lions Park, okay, how can you then provide some of that if that's a missing need? But I would like to see those gaps first.
Thank you. So I haven't had a chance to speak. So my thoughts are that I think Wilmore Park should be left a little bit more on the rustic end as it is, maybe with a few enhancements to make maybe the washroom facilities or something more, but I don't think investing sewer, power, or additional water into it would make it any more attractable. I think it already has a lot of attractions to it right now when we look at the amenities provided. But as Councillor Sorensen mentioned, if we're missing a gap in the community at the Lions Park, I would be interested in that to see if there was some more options available, or to see what other options may be available. So, Councillor Bevan?
Through the chair, I'd like to see us develop here Lions Park, and that I know no matter where park you go to, there's always an overlap on everything. No matter where you go, you get an overlap. And I don't think we have to go 100% in providing year-round facilities there if somebody wants to stay there. But you know, water, power, sewer, you know, places, everything else, a shower, and that is great. I think it's a little gem we have in our town that's been here forever. I know people that come back here and they prefer going to Lions Park than any place else, because they get out, they can go to all the restaurants around town, they can walk through town, they can take off from there, go down to our trails. They used to come back when we had the train here, and they'd sit in the train even though it didn't run anymore. They still sat in the train, took pictures, and they're coming back with their grandkids or whatever and that. And you know, I think it's something in town that we have, and then people come over the overpass, they see it. It used to be a beautiful little site and that, and it's still a good site. And I'd like to see us, we spent $400,000 out there at Wilmore Park for, it's seasonal, yes, but it doesn't get all that much use out there all the time either. I think we could spend some money in here and fix up our Lions Park and make it for the people that want to come into town. I have friends that are in the other parks that are in the outskirts of town. They have to drive, they have to do this, they would rather be in town than that day. And as a matter of fact, I ran into some people today that do come back to Edson, and they love going to Lions Park, and they do camp in there and stuff like that. And if we can put any kind of something in there for the families for recreation or something like that or whatever, I think, you know, we've got to seriously look at it. I think I'd hate to see the Lions campground go away, because it is a good investment in our town.
Okay. Councillor Shenard?
Actually, just stop up on Wilmore Park, and some of it's already been said. We invested $400,000 to attract tourism, so I cannot believe that we're going to say and leave it rustic. We need to think what the real campers want. Yes, there's the rustic people, but RVers and campers. So I mean, Wilmore Park, I'm not against the bike trail, leave that more wilderness. But since we invested $400,000, I would say looking at least matching those dollars and do another $400,000 investment, so the tourists have someplace to go. Because with the amount of bike parks, and that's what we invested for to attract tourism, so I don't want to stop now. If if we did the investment, let's carry on and make it so you get the best of both worlds, because part of it is rustic, the other part, as we call the main part, let's make it into something to really get tourists, because people in their $200,000 motorhome don't want to sleep in a tent. But if they know they can come out and they have bikes, and yes, during the day they're rough and tumble in their bikes, but at night they want to go to their comfort, so we should accommodate them with something that would get them to come there.
Thank you.
Sarah Derrick?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I suggest those ingest as a borderline code of conduct order to consider the motorhomers the real campers. I don't know how the rest of the crew feels about that. But the point is well made, I think, for Councillor Chenard, is to say the type of activity that is taking place there reflects a little bit on who we anticipate to be the users, and I know that the gentlemen here have been giving that some consideration, who is actually wanting to go and use these facilities, and which category they kind of fit into is a part of their thinking. So.
Just a comment, I know I've spent some time out at Wilmore Park, and I've seen lots of different sizes of campers out there, so I don't feel at the moment that it's limiting any, and it's my understanding that some trees have been also taken out to accommodate slides and other aspects, so it's a little user friendly on their campers as well. So, Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, through the Chair of the Administration. Can you give us an idea what it would cost to fully service all those lots out there at Lions Campground? What that would cost for water, sewer, power?
We don't have that,
No.
through the chair to Councillor Bevan, we don't have those numbers at this point. We haven't put that, because we haven't got that direction yet, but if we could look at what that fully would cost, that would.
You know, I'd like to see it, because I believe previous council, we talked about this too, didn't we? And we had said, you know, what would it cost to fully service the lots out there, especially the sewer line running right beside the fence out there, the whole works and everything else. You know, it's gonna cost to go into each site in that, but you know, I'd like to see a cost on that too, and that would
So, through the chair to Councillor Bevan, just a little bit of clarification. So, water and sewer to all the sites at Lions?
And if I may add, I think beyond that, does all of council see that as an important thing? I think we want to try and reach some kind of consensus on where council comes out on that before we go and do a bunch of research on any one kind of outcome.
Councillor Curry?
I still would need to see a gap analysis first. So I still need to see that it's, there is a need. And I would be more in with those costs, so I would need to see the need versus what is being available in the community and already provided. But then I would like that breakdown of, I think, knowing, okay, when we're doing that, we're really looking towards that temporary housing, when we're adding all those services, that often is where you're leading to. And so if that's, you know, making sure that we're not taking away all from the tourism, but I would like to kind of see more of the gap analysis first, and then a breakdown of, okay, this many sites, is it, if it's a little bit for all, or is it a substantial difference if we did a section, that, but gap analysis first.
Through the chair to Councillor Curry and the council. So with definitely gap analysis, I hear, and we will take a look at that. I just want to clarify though that we're looking not at a market analysis, because the market itself would indicate we could fully service Lions Park, and there would be a market for that through that. But a gap analysis, I'm just clarifying, is looking at the gaps in the service of what we have out there, correct?
Councillor Sorensen?
Okay. I'll take a stab at answering that on behalf of council. So in my mind, it's looking at what commercial providers or other campgrounds are providing and seeing what they're not providing, or if one type of campground is constantly full and 100% maxed out, zero vacancy, maybe we could offer the similar service because there's obviously a demand for that.
Okay. Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, as far as the sewer hookup goes, there was a sewer hookup at the Lions Hall before. And when you talk gap analysis, or I guess you're looking actually what is the need, that is what a gap analysis is, to decide that. the whole back row here has had extensive research on campgrounds. They know what campers are asking for, so possibly in question period, they can offer something.
Councillor Chenard?
Since we spent 15 grand to figure out our wages, what would it cost to get a contractor in to do an estimate? I mean, surely that costs a lot of money, so where to bring us information, we would put it as an invitation to tender, and then you could bring us back the answers, that what would it cost to full service Lions Park and add services out at Wilmore Park, and then you could bring us back some figures, and at that time, you know, because depending on the extreme, or going by other campgrounds, you could spend $3 million at Wilmore Park making it state of the art, or we could scale it back and say, okay, like I said earlier, matching dollars. So what would 400,000 look like? Does it get a shower house and stuff? And then looking at power is very expensive, and then I stated at Lions Park, we're worrying about being competitive. You virtually go 50% of the campground is for long-term, as we're saying, and the other 50%, and the reason that is cost recovery. So yes, we are competing, a lot of times we're over full, but you just make 50% of the campground long-term, the rest is as other campgrounds, 1 week, 2 week stay. Then that's the important part, is trying to get cost recovery, plus we can improve it.
If I may just jump in really quickly, Madam Chair, thank you. I think we still need kind of the philosophical guidance, because if we're going to invite someone to come in and do a plan for us, we need to tell them what the outcome is, or what the purpose is, or what the desirability is. And so the first thing that we need to nail down is what type of campgrounds do we want to offer. And I think that what I've heard so far is that a little bit of a deeper understanding of a gap type analysis of what is taking place in our community, and perhaps where the opportunities may be if we are going to make some kind of investment in campgrounds, that we're filling a need or supplementing a service that is deficient in some way, rather than doubling down on an area that is already well served in the community.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Sorensen?
I have to disagree with Councillor Chenard. We have excellent managers hired now. I'd love to see a campground plan from Mr. Latour, and I think he's fully competent to provide us with that report. I would, just echoing Councillor Curry's comment, I think the emphasis should be on gap analysis, but if there are some rough numbers you can provide for these services, then provide them, but I don't spend weeks on it. That would be my thought.
Okay, Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, I think the gap analysis would most necessarily be on the temporary housing, like where you're talking about that. As far as tourism goes, I think that'd be hard to prove where your gap analysis is on that. I mean, and is this what we want to do as a council, to offer something that sells the town of Edson? Like when you come over the highway, you can camp there, or you book there. And then recreation, to do a gap analysis on that, I guess you'd have to find out how many people are coming for the bike park, or how many are coming for a swim meet. I don't know, like it's a huge thing to ask you to do a gap analysis on facts that I don't even think you can find. You can find it on the temporary housing, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Curry?
Through the chair, I'll just reemphasize my answer to the question. I am interested in recreation and a wee bit of tourism possibly for Wilmore Park, and tourism with some temporary housing for Lions Park. So where you want us at, that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Through the chair to Mr. Latour, I think almost everything you need to do the gap analysis is already in this report. You have the types of services provided, you have the number of sites, their usage rates. I think you've done most of the work. You just have to go in and categorize them as recreational or whatever, and then see which are fully utilized and which are not.
Okay. Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, I absolutely agree with Councillor Curry is what she'd like to see developed.
And my comments are, I also agree with Councillor Curry's comments. Councillor Chenard?
I would have to agree too. Let's look at the cost, because we're sitting here debating, we don't know what the cost is. So let's get the cost to make this reality.
Okay. Councillor Bevan, do you have anything?
No, that horse has died.
All right. Does administration have enough information to move forward?
Through the chair to council, yes, thank you very much. I think we did get some information there. And I agree with Councillor Sorensen. I think we have a chunk of the information. We can recategorize it a bit and bring some information back. And I think a little tighter concept of what we might move forward based on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So next, we will move on to questions from the media and public regarding items from this committee of the whole meeting.
Actually, I do have a question.
Okay.
I like that she says I actually.
Ask away your last one, Candy.
With regards to the remuneration policy, in the new draft document, under the extended health and dental benefits, it says each participating member will be responsible to pay 100% of premiums for these benefits. So does that mean that council gets benefits and just has to pay for like the upgrade?
No, so right now council doesn't receive any benefits.
Okay.
If we wanted to receive benefits, then we would be paying for them out of our salary.
Okay, I was just confused that it crossed out cost of and then broke premiums instead. But
I
is
think,
it just the same thing then?
right.
Okay, that was all.
Does anybody else have any questions? If you do, just stand up and just state your name.
I don't have a question,
Okay.
per se, just a comment if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
4.5 years ago, I was here and heard a loud and clear concern that they wanted, that was the first thing you see when you come over the overpass, is the park, and it's supposed to be a park. Over the years, long before my time, services have dropped. I mean, I guess there used to be a railroad, pond, a fishing pond, and all kinds of things, and little cabins over the picnic tables. If it was me, my dream would be totally revamp, get it how you'd like it laid out. Right now it's chopped up. It was designed in the 70s for little campers. And so you really can't, I mean, there's 50 4 powered sites in there, but you can't utilize them all for that. You get some tents in there and stuff like that. It's diverse. We get, every day there's people coming from Edmonton to Jasper, international guests. Not all of them speak English. I mean, it's not just tourism or workers or campers. I have people up here fishing trips, they want to stay in Alliance Park, but I'd like to see a long-term plan, and there is a use because people pull in there, and right now no place, because they've all got these big units. Not really rustic campers anymore. They want a place to dump. Even though there's a place in town to dump, before they get there, they want to be able to unload themselves in the campground. Or they drive on, and right now I'm getting calls because there's no place else to stay. And actually the other day I've noticed there's vehicles that I think are sleeping in there because no place else to go. And motels want to hear us. I have a vision of turning it back into a park. If we could relay it out, get things back in there, start putting trees back in, that's what I'd like to see, and then defined campsites.
Thank you. Councillor Sorensen, did you want to?
Yeah, point of order, Madam Chair. This is question period, so I very much appreciate that statement, but I just ask that we stick to that rule. Thank you.
Yeah, we can allow for comments during recess time as well. So are there any other questions from the gallery regarding items from the council meeting? No? Okay. Then I recommend that we'll take a 5 to 10 minute recess before we move to a closed meeting session.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, Heather, we're back here. I need a motion that council move into a closed session in accordance with section 21(1)(b) of the FOIP Act. Councillor Sorensen makes that motion. All in favor? Motion carried. Okay, and I'll get a motion that the meeting be adjourned.
Just want to see. Good, sorry.
Councillor Chenard makes that motion. All in favor?
Good.
Motion carried.